In the Spitting Image, Chapter 13, entitled The Hall of Unicorns. Napoleon never arrived the next morning. Leon waited and waited, pacing back and forth inside the lobby. Finally, he had no choice but to give up and hail a cab to school. As luck would have it, one was idling right in front of the hotel.
"Where are you desiring to go?"
the driver inquired. "The classical school," Leon said sadly. He provided the address and glanced at the driver's hack license. The photo ID pictured a scruffy man with a nasty scar that ran from cheek to chin. Whack! The lock buttons on the back doors suddenly dropped out of reach. Leon noticed moments later that the cabbie was staring at him in the rearview mirror. That made him nervous. When the taxi stopped at a traffic light, Leon tested a door handle. It didn't work. Trapped! Leon immediately switched into defense mode. Pulling his travel book from its brand new purple pouch, he wrote down the full name and complete ID number of the driver. Ravi Rampertab, G63L. He figured that if Scarface turned out to be a homicidal nutcase, the travel book might be the only way to link the driver to his body. After it washed onto a riverbank, riddled with bullets. Wait a minute, Leon told himself. My travel book won't help. Supposing Scarface does dump my body in the river, the ink will run. Too bad Lily Matisse didn't make the pouch out of waterproof plastic. Maybe I could use my string ring on the driver like that guy in the Kung Fu movie PW was talking about. Leon's backseat terror lasted a full 10 minutes until, thwack, the doors on the taxicab unlocked.
"Here we are," said the driver. "I am believing this is where you are needing to arrive."
Leon looked out the window. The sight of school made his whole body relax. As he was paying the fare, he asked the question that the kidnapping scare had almost made him forget. "Excuse me, Mr. Rampertab? Could you tell me where you're from?"
"Why are you desiring to know?" the driver asked.
Leon told him about his collection.
"That is most interesting,"
said the driver without answering the question. So Leon asked again, this time waving his travel book. "Could I know where you were born, Mr. Rampertab?" The driver took his time responding.
"South America," he said eventually.
"Where in South America?" The driver turned around to look at Leon through the partition of the cab.
"The north part of South America," he said.
Leon pressed further. "But where exactly? What country in the north part of South America?"
"You are wanting to know precisely what country in South America I'm coming from?"
"Yes," said Leon impatiently. Finally, as Leon was reaching for the door handle, Ravi Rampertab responded. "Suriname," he said very softly. "Suriname?" Leon shouted. "Are you sure?"
The driver laughed. "Oh, most definitely. I was born in Paramaribo, and Paramaribo is most certainly the capital of Suriname. You may check in any atlas at all if you are not wanting to believe me."
Leon's whole body started shaking with joy. "Are you feeling okay?" asked the driver. "I'm feeling better than okay."
"On a scale of 1 to 10, how might you be feeling?"
asked the driver. "Huh?" Leon gave Ravi Rampertab a funny look. What were the chances 2 taxi drivers judged feelings numerically?
The driver said, "Would news of my birthplace perhaps allow you to be having a 9 3/4 day?"
A light bulb went on inside Leon's head. "Napoleon!" he cried.
"Indeed," said Ravi Rampertab.
Napoleon explained the whole glorious plot that same afternoon on the drive back to the hotel.
It is not a simple thing finding a Surinamese taxi driver in this city, Monsieur Leon. Not easy at all.
How did you do it?
Ah, well, Napoleon said, grinning broadly. I started with my dispatcher. He checked his list and said he could find me a driver from Senegal or Sri Lanka or Sierra Leone.
But I've already got all those.
I know, Monsieur Leon. I told him it was Suriname I required, that no other country would do. So he gave me names of rival taxi companies. I called and called. Eventually, I tracked down our Monsieur Rampertab. He lives 30 miles away, yet he did not hesitate to do me this kindness. He knows the importance of birthdays.
Later that evening, Leon triumphantly jabbed a pushpin into the capital of Suriname and told everyone in the hotel about how Napoleon had helped him conquer South America.
Sweetie, I believe the conquistadors got there before you, said Emma Zeisel. And some of my people were there before them, said Maria.
The next morning, Leon left the house lugging a gigantic box of pastries.
Here, he told Napoleon as he shoved the box through the partition separating the front and back of the taxi. This is for you.
For me?
Said Napoleon. Frau Haffenreffer baked you some Napoleons for getting me Suriname.
Napoleons for Napoleon?
Napoleon gasped. I tried to explain that you hate them, but Frau Haffenreffer wouldn't listen. Keep them, Monsieur Leon. I do not want them. Give them out at school. The timing couldn't have been better. When the taxi pulled up to the steps of the school, Leon saw a yellow bus parked out front.
The field trip, he exclaimed.
He boarded the bus with the pastries and headed to the back, where Lily Matisse and P.W. were saving him a spot. On the way, he passed Lumpkin, who was too busy teasing Antoinette to notice him or the pastry box. Your mom's chaperoning? P.W. said to Lily Matisse as Regina Jaspro climbed aboard. Looks like it, said Lily Matisse. She sounded less than thrilled. What's that purple thing she's wearing? P.W. asked. She calls that her placemat dress, Lily Matisse said with a sigh. The 7th graders gave her some placemats for helping at the Nimble Fingers craft fair last year. Only Mom doesn't believe in placemats, so she turned them into a dress. P.W. and Leon exchanged puzzled looks. And check out the handbag, said Lily Matisse. She made it out of an old velveteen glove. She's always complaining that her bus tokens get caught in the thumb. Well, she looks real colorful, Leon said graciously. Not as colorful as the coach, said P.W. Skip Casperitis climbed onto the bus, sporting a bright green nylon tracksuit. Check out his pocket, said Leon. I'll bet you that's a spit jar. Did you read Chapter 7 in the Medieval Reader? Said P.W. excitedly. They had a fun facts box that talked about spit. There was this monk called Jonas who figured out spit contains magic powers that can bring the dead back to life. Mr. Mayock wishes there were powers that could make certain students pay attention during read-alouds instead of drawing pictures to each other. A large black cape darkened the front of the bus. Quiet down, you knaves, Miss Hagmeyer yelled, flicking her instructional needle in the air. If you don't, I'll make you sit alphabetically. She looks like a witch the way she waves that thing, Thomas whispered. It's a pity this isn't a magic wand, Mr. Warkowski, Miss Hagmeyer shot back. If it were, I would use it to remove your voice box. However, since I can't, adjust your volume control to low while we are driving to the cloisters. After performing a head count, Miss Hagmeyer sat down and told the driver he could go. What exactly are the cloisters? Leon asked as the bus rumbled uptown. It's this ancient castle place with a medieval museum, Lily Matisse said. Mom takes me there all the time. I hope they have a dungeon with torture stuff, said P.W. Why? Said Leon. We just left a dungeon with torture stuff. 10 minutes into the trip, Leon held up the pastry box. Good folk, he said loudly, it is I, Sir Leon, wishing to ask How art thee? It's not how art thee, quibbled Antoinette. It's how art thou? Whatever, said Leon. You mean mayhap. Enough! Enow, she corrected. Knock it off, said Leon. He gave the pastry box a gentle shake and said, Anyone hungry? What'd you bring? Someone shouted. A treasure beyond rubies, Leon answered, borrowing a phrase from the medieval reader. He pulled the birthday ring from his pocket and slid it onto his finger. With a quick, effortless tug, he cut through the string and said, Behold! As he lifted the lid. Classmates peered inside the box at the custard delicacies. Antoinette immediately started pestering Leon whether people actually ate Napoleons in the Middle Ages. He offered her and offered P.W. a pastry, and then turned to Lily Matisse. And you, milady? Lily Matisse blushed and bowed her head before grabbing a cream-filled dessert. Leon handed out a few more pastries before making his way to where the teachers were seated. No, thank you, Miss Hagmeyer said, barely looking up from her embroidery. I brought my cottage cheese. Regina Jaspro and Coach Kasperitis weren't so restrained. They each took one. The driver of the bus, Mr. Groot, the same fellow who taught woodshop and served as the school photographer, would also have accepted a Napoleon if Miss Hagmeyer hadn't intervened. A 4-ounce pastry and a 4-ton bus should not be handled at the same time, Mr. Groot. Satisfy your sweet tooth after we have parked. And with regards to the matter of safety, return to your seat at once, Mr. Zeisel. On his way back, Leon hit a roadblock. Hey, Sir Pantyhose, said Lumpkin, you skipped me. Leon tried to push through the muscled olive-drab arm that now doubled as a toll gate, but he couldn't get by. Leon repositioned his hand on Leon's shoulder and gave it a painful squeeze. Would thouest like to wear those desserts like you wore the hag's underwear? Lumpkin said. Leon tried to pull away. What's going on back there? Miss Hagmeyer asked. Nothing, Miss Hagmeyer, Leon and Lumpkin both cried. Back in your seats, she admonished. Lumpkin refused to let go. So what'll it be? He said in a dark, low voice. Even with his bladed birthday ring, Leon knew he was no match for Henry Lumpkin. Now, Mr. Zeisel, Miss Hagmeyer commanded. Here, help yourself, said Leon, suppressing the impulse to smoosh a Napoleon straight into Lumpkin's face. It was a picture-perfect November day when the bus pulled into the parking lot of the Cloisters. A crisp breeze gave the air a pungent odor of wrinkled apples. With Lumpkin temporarily bribed, Leon felt a brief sense of calm, until Antoinette started showing off, calling out architectural terms that she had plundered from the medieval reader. Turret! I see a turret, she squealed, and those are definitely crenels. And look, 1, 2, 3, 4 loopholes. Maybe we'll get lucky and she'll find that dungeon I was hoping for, said P.W. And if we're real lucky, said Leon, it'll have 2 empty cells, one for Her Highness and one for Lord Lumpkin. Aren't you forgetting the hag, said Lily Matisse. Excellent point, said Leon. Make it 3 cells. At the museum ticket desk, Miss Hagmeyer quickly remedied the alphabetical chaos she had endured during the bus ride. Okay, pay attention, she said. A through G's, stay with me. Coach Kasperitis will take the H through N's. Miss Jaspro will monitor the rest of you, rapscallions. We regroup at the tapestries in exactly 1 hour. Do not be late. Leon was less than thrilled that his last name separated him from Lily Matisse and P.W., but at least he hadn't gotten stuck with Miss Hagmeyer. Leading the O through Z's into the courtyard, Regina Jaspro explained to her charges how the museum's ancient stone buildings had been shipped from France and Italy. Every brick, every stone, every roof tile was numbered in white chalk, she said breathlessly. If you think your Lego constructions are complicated,
Try pulling apart a medieval church, complete with flying buttresses. Then try wrapping it up, sending it across the ocean, unwrapping it, and snapping it back together. At an archway, she stuck out her tongue at a carved stone monster that was making a similarly rude gesture. See that gargoyle? What do you think caused the black stains on its teeth? Didn't floss enough? Said Thomas Witkowski. Nice try. Chewed tobacco too much, like the coach? Leon offered. Getting warmer, said Miss Jaspro. The gargoyle did do a lot of spitting in its time. Any guesses what it spat? Boiling oil? Nope, that's too warm, Miss Jaspro said. Actually, it spouted harmless rainwater. But if you come with me through this arch, I can show you something more satisfyingly deadly. Miss Jaspro guided her group into an herb garden and spoke about plant poisons, and then continued on to a library gallery where she provided an overview on toxic pigments. See the red paint in that illuminated manuscript, Miss Jaspro said, pointing at a peaceful castle landscape. Artists call that color vermilion. Chemists, however, know it as mercuric sulfide. It's highly poisonous. And the yellow on the knight's banner, that's orpiment. Orpiment contains arsenic, which is the principal ingredient in rat bait. And further up, that golden sun, any guesses what that's made of? No one had a clue. Dried cow urine, Miss Jaspro said matter-of-factly. Thomas raised his hand. Miss Jaspro, he said, I think it's been an hour. Miss Hagmaier is probably expecting us. And we certainly shouldn't keep the Miss Hagmaier waiting, said Miss Jaspro. But on her way to the meeting point, she had a change of heart. I can't resist a quick detour, she said with a conspiratorial wink. Miss Jaspro hustled the O through Zs into a room dominated by a beautiful stained glass window. Isn't it a joy to watch the light shine through this? It's like medieval motion pictures. She was just launching into a speech about the dangers of glassmaking when she was interrupted by a tooting sound. The coach came running up, proudly displaying a clay whistle shaped like a jester's head that he had just purchased in the cloister's gift shop. Regina, Phyllis is getting a little, well, you know. Impatient, the art teacher suggested. Fidgety? Restless? You got it, confirmed the coach. At last, Miss Hagmaier said as the O through Zs joined the A through Ns at the entrance to the tapestry room. You're 8 minutes late. It's my fault, said Regina Jaspro. Of course it is, said Miss Hagmaier. She leveled a look of intense displeasure at her tardy colleague before marching everyone into a large stone hall. These, she said, waving her needle, are the reason I arranged this trip. Rugs? Said Lumpkin. Not rugs. Tapestries. 7 of the most exquisite tapestries in the world. And each one has a unicorn, Antoinette blurted out. That's why you had us make unicorns. That is correct, Miss Breed. I gave you that assignment so that you could better appreciate the masterpieces on these walls. Guiding the group to a hanging on the far side of the room, Miss Hagmaier said, and I would like you to focus your attention on that rose right there. It required no fewer than 34 stitches per inch. You heard me correctly. 34 SPI. I'd settle for 6, Leon whispered. Miss Hagmaier neutralized Leon with a glower before continuing. That exquisite rose is one of 627 similarly exacting flowers that blossom on the start of the hunt. I know because I tallied them up twice. In addition to examples of the 7 stitches of virtue that all of you should know, this masterpiece incorporates tent stitches, stem stitches, knot stitches. Miss Hagmaier suspended her speech. Did you wish to add something, Miss Jaspro? All heads turned toward the art teacher, who was whispering to the coach. "What?" said Miss Jaspro. "Add something? Me? No." "You are quite sure?" said Miss Hagmaier. "We wouldn't want to deprive the class of an artist's perspective." The snideness in her voice was unmistakable. Miss Jaspro turned red. "Sorry for the disturbance. Please go on." "It's hardly a disturbance, Regina. Enlighten us." "Well, if you insist," said Miss Jaspro. "I was just telling Coach Kasparitis here that I find your perspective slightly—" She took a moment to choose the right word. "Numbery." "Numbery?" "You know what I mean. This many knots, that many flowers. When I look at these tapestries, I tend to see something a little more, well, magical." "Perhaps you would share your viewpoint more fully," Miss Hagmaier said icily. P.W. whispered to Leon, "Let the joust begin." "Quiet!" Miss Hagmaier yelled. "I wish to hear what Miss Jaspro has to say." Everyone froze. Even the coach remained motionless, despite the wad of tobacco wedged against one cheek. "Go on, Regina," Miss Hagmaier goaded. "Educate us on the magic of medieval and Renaissance embroidery." "Very well." The art teacher waved her hand around the room. "All of this is not about numbers, Phyllis. It's about adventure. It's about mystery. It's about struggle. And above all, it's about passion." Miss Hagmaier gave Regina Jaspro the once-over. "This from a woman who wears placemats!" "At least I don't turn my students into garment workers," Miss Jaspro snapped. "Tell me, Phyllis, are the kids making quotas? I swear if the school didn't give me a break on tuition, I'd have Lily Matisse yanked off your